give you an unrealistic attitude about what marriage is. The realistic attitude of marriage is that marriage is what we like to call happy, hard work. That's what marriage is. And American culture wants you to think that marriage is just easy and fun, and it's not hard work. But it's happy hard work. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I must admit, I'm married for over 40 years. Making a wedding this week, Mr. Shem. And I can tell you that the way to look at marriage is that whoever you're going to marry, it makes no difference. Whoever you're going to marry, you're going to adjust it. No one is going to get into marriage, happy marriage, and not have adjustments. And this is exactly what God had in mind for us. Does that mean that marriage can't be uplifting? Of course it can be uplifting. Can marriage be fun? Can marriage be exciting? Can marriage give people pleasure? Yes. But all that fun and all that pleasure that marriage can give will only be the case with equally hard work. And that hard work is there for the purpose of making the quality of your life better, making you a more complete person. So God made man and woman think different, act different, feel different, in order that we could be happier people. It doesn't sound like what American culture teaches us. When we look back in our Torah and we say, you know, Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu, they had differences. There was a whole argument what they should do with Yishmael. Yitzchak and Rivka had differences. Happy marriages can have differences. Happy marriages should have differences. It's only a question of how you deal with it. American culture tries to tell people that marriage, because of great attraction, which is important, will make people happy and they won't have to adjust. In fact, most people, yeshiva boys too, everybody, a lot of times when they get engaged, they say, we're on the same page, we see things alike. And then married people find out you don't see things alike. They see things different, and it's supposed to be that way. Because marriage is the place where a person makes himself a better person. How do you become better? By seeing the differences, by acknowledging those differences, and by becoming a better person to deal with those differences. That's how you become a better person. The more you give, the more you feel rewarded. Your wife has to give too. But marriage is about giving, not about taking. We are born as selfish individuals. As when Adam and Chava were created, and they've had Cain and Hevel, they were born as 20-year-olds. They weren't babies. And then Adam and Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, and then we started having little children. Cain and Hevel, the Medrash tells us, was born as 20-year-olds. Children, which we now all have, grow up selfish, crying, needy. That was all because of sin. And now our job is, when we get older and get married, we have to take that selfishness and make ourselves, by giving to somebody else and committing to somebody else our life, we have to make ourselves better people. So therefore, marriage is a laboratory where you work on yourself and you become a better person and a happier person, forgiving. And The fact that she's going to see things different than you, that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. Of course you have to have common goals. Of course you have to have attraction. Of course you have to care about each other and have a feeling. But it doesn't mean you're going to always see eye to eye. You're not supposed to. What you're supposed to is realize that by giving to this person, you will come to loving. You know why I'm against Father's Day? It's a wonderful idea to honor your parents. But there's something in the whole culture which is a mistake. Listen carefully. Anniversary gifts are wonderful. Birthday gifts are wonderful. They're good things. That's not what makes happy marriages. People do them, you should do them too when you get married. You know what makes happy marriage? Day in and day out, small acts of kindness and consideration to somebody else creates more happiness than big affairs like making a nice bar mitzvah and making a nice wedding. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's good. That doesn't give happiness. Happiness comes from day in and day out doing little things and showing that you care. And figuring out what those little things are for your wife and her figuring out what those little things are for you. And the day-to-day caring for another human being brings more love and happiness than exciting things like honeymoons and anniversaries. And there's nothing wrong with having a honeymoon. There's nothing wrong with celebrating an anniversary. They're good things. A great man once said that small people sometimes do big things. Big people always do small things. Think about that. This morning, I landed from Toronto, called my wife to see how I could help out for the wedding. She asked me to make 4 or 5 phone calls that she couldn't get to. I was busy on the phone. Right, Avram? Mm-hmm. Right? Not to impress anybody. That's what you do. Little things, little surprises. The wife goes to sleep early at night, and the dishes are in the sink. The husband washes the dishes. It's a small little act, right? But it means you care about my daily life. And the more we do small things on a steady basis, when you give, ahava is the word have, to give. Love comes from giving. The more you give, the happier you'll be. I always tell people, if there's one thing I could ever say, everybody wants to have happy children, right? You're not even married yet, but still, when you do get married, you're going to want to have happy kids. Everyone wants to have happy kids, right? If there's one thing I could tell you to have happy children, imagine, I'm not going to do this, but if I want to make this point to tell you how important this is, if I could, I would get up on the table and yell like a madman, one sentence about having happy children. Okay? One sentence. So imagine me, I'm getting up on the table now, and I'm starting to yell like a madman. One sentence. There's nothing that will bring your children, remember I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, more happiness in life than them seeing their father and mother care for each other. When the 2 most important people in your life care for each other, that makes children happy. And there's people that think they'll make their kids a big bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, they'll make them a big wedding, they'll get them a car for their graduation, they'll give them all kinds of things, but they'll treat their spouses lousy. But since they gave their kids a lot of physical things, the kids are going to be happy, they won't be happy. The ones that are happy are the children that see that the 2 closest people to them care about each other. Which means that when you see things differently, You look at the big picture and say, I want to create happiness in my life. If I want happiness, I want my children to be happy. It means my first focus is, how do I give to my wife? How does my wife give to me? That is what makes happy children. I just got down from the table, I just stopped yelling. And that's the truth. And I'm sure that as I'm saying this statement right now, without knowing, and I'm not a mind reader, that every person here is thinking about what he saw at his own home. And the scary thing is that children that saw their parents fight make up their minds they're not going to do the same thing, and then get married and they do the same thing many times. That's scary. So if you didn't see it right, what do you do now besides just telling yourself that I'm not going to let that happen to me? What do you do? In business, with your siblings, with anybody you have to start practicing to learn how to give and not to be upset, not to always have your way. Everybody knows the story in the Torah of Yaakov Avinu. Esav came.
So you should start compromising in business if that's what you have to do.
Absolutely. Not the compromise that you have to be taken advantage of, right? But you can have a partner where, right, where if it's just a question of he has a bad idea, it's not going to work, so you have to point out it's not going to work. If you would want to do it one way, you want to do it one way, but I like my way, but his way could work too. Do it. Yeah. Yaakov Avinu met Esav. 400 men were coming to kill him. He gave him 550 animals. Count up all the animals that were in Parshat Vayishlach. 550 animals. Probably gave him 100 grand. A lot of money. You know how much Esav deserved? Not a penny. Hashem wanted Yaakov to be the Bechor. And he gave him 550 animals. He bought them off. And if you look at the story, Esav walks away like a winner. Yaakov walks away like a loser. That's what the story looks like. Now look at the story, the bigger picture. Yaakov Avinu said, at that time, he said, that in 2015, there's going to be Jewish children sitting in Los Angeles. They're keeping Torah mitzvahs. You know why? Because I'm going to build the Klal Yisrael with those 12 Shvatim, and we're going to be the result of that. So Yaakov Avinu had a long view of life and said, okay, Esav is wrong, I am right. I became the Bechor because Hashem wanted me to be. Should I fight? Or should I say, to heck with 550 animals, 100 grand later, I want to build Klal Yisrael.
You couldn't really kill Esav, you had no choice.
Well, he could have fought, he could have tried.
He would have lost.
Well,
and then he would have
it's not clear. It's not clear. We have many times when Jews are successful, but some of the children could have died. The point being, somebody pointed out, a couple has a disagreement, and you know you're right, and you know she's wrong, on an inconsequential point, and something that's unimportant. So, make a decision. Do I stand up and say, but I'm right, and therefore continue the fight? Or I say, it doesn't make a difference anyhow, so let her think she's right. It didn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference in a lot of little things, right? And what do we do as human beings? We're small-minded. We don't think big. We don't think in terms of the happiness of our kids, our own happiness, and we fight. Because we're right. right? And that's wrong. Look at the big picture. Say, okay. So she's overreacting. Okay. Next. Water off the duck's back. Not worth making an issue about. Right? That doesn't mean that you have to become a doormat and be stepped on. But it does mean that you have to have the sense of the big picture of your life. You want happy kids. You want to have a happy life. You can't make every issue, even if you're right. So what? Anything I said so far that makes sense? Hmm? Was anything that was bothersome? You can tell me, I can handle it.
So many of us here are not married or single. So how do we relate this to where we are right now?
Right. Well, let's try to figure out, why are you still single?
So I haven't gone on any dates.
Huh? Why not?
I have yet to start fully dating, personally.
How old are you?
25.
Okay.
But this is the culture that we live in Los Angeles.
Right.
So it's not that we were 20 years old in yeshiva and they're trying to set us up as yeshiva family.
I got married at 25 too.
It's a good age.
But the question is, but right now, so when would you like to get married?
Like tonight, this sounds pretty good.
No. Tonight is rushing it. No doubt. But,
Next week.
right, next week. Okay, now we're talking.
I'm happy that we hear real questions.
Yes.
This is what we are taking here. What we are going
Right.
to
We have harder questions after this.
Why do you think the divorce rate in America is so high?
People get married for the wrong reason.
Right. Okay, maybe you should be sitting in this chair. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be attracted, but people are attracted. There's a lot of Hollywood types, you know all about these people, right? And they don't stay happily married. They're good technicians. They know how to physically act with one another, and they have miserable lives. Why?
Well, I'd say there's three stuff that you need to marry someone. They only have one of them.
I don't even know if they have one. I mean, in other words, marriage, intimacy only brings happiness if the sensitivity that you show to your wife in the bedroom is matched by the sensitivity you show to her in the kitchen. Right? But if people are tough with their spouses, just when they want to be intimate, that's when they're soft, then the intimacy doesn't help them gain any real closeness.
100%.
Hmm?
100%. I think we should turn off the camera.
But,
So everyone will start asking their questions.
okay, that's up to you.
Let's turn it off.
Okay. I want